Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome back to the Mancunian Way. Good morning, Rich. How are you?
Uh, Good morning. I'm okay. A little bit tired. Busy time at work
Well,
and lots going on in the world. So, but
27,
yeah, I'm good.
26, after clock in the morning for Rich. But we know we do appreciate him coming out and showing his support for the channel as he always does. Well, I hope he does. One of the co-owners. So you need to. Right, so we're here to talk about something that there was doubts about last week going into this, but we are back playing games on Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. Borussia Dortmund. Both teams did quite well on opening day. Dortmund got a 3-0 win against Copenhagen, and City demolished Seville over in Spain at 4-0. So, what are your initial thoughts on this one, Rich?
I mean, I actually um, think it's going to be a game that probably suits City. I think we've played Dortmund a few times in recent seasons, and they've had spells against us. But generally, they've been a team who quite suit us. They haven't defended really deep, and they've given us a bit of time and space. They've tried to actually play us and get a result. It's not like watching some of the Premier League games where they're settling for 0-0. So generally, teams that do that, except for Real Madrid last year, generally teams that do that suit us quite well, because if we're a better quality side, then that kind of more open game is better for us. We're obviously going to have a good insight to them with likely to be, I would think, two players playing who played for Dortmund. And it was interesting listening to Akanji talking about Dortmund this week, and he was talking about the how high quality training and everything was at Dortmund, and then he came to City and he realised it was there, but it was on another level in terms of the quality and in terms of the intensity. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. And good morning and hello to everyone. Thanks for watching.
Does Haaland and Akanji give us an extra advantage? Because obviously they know how Dortmund are playing. But, Rich, on saying that, if we look at the Bundesliga so far, that's very weird. That's a very weird league this season.
They're fifth at the moment, but they've actually not had a bad start. They've won, I think, 3 or 4 of their 6 games. But they're still down at fifth. I mean, you look at their team, and they signed a couple of good centre backs, and they signed, was it Haller from Ajax? So they signed some reasonable players, but I mean, we can't get away from they lost their superstar.
They brought in Adeyemi from RB Salzburg for around about 20-30 million. So,
and they got Haller, and they got a couple of centre backs, I think. One from Cologne and also. So they've kind of spent the money, but they've spent it on 3 or 4 players that they've got from selling.
What about Schuler or whatever he's called? That shocked me, that signing from Bayern Munich. Because you generally see Borussia Dortmund going to Bayern Munich. You don't see a lot of Bayern Munich going to Borussia Dortmund unless the surplus to requirements.
Yeah, and so I must admit, my instant reaction whenever it happens is they're surplus to requirements. You can only assume that. But now it's interesting. They're obviously a strong team. They're obviously from arguably as good a league as there is in Europe now after the Premier League. I think the Bundesliga is a step down, but I think the quality in the Bundesliga is strong, and those teams. I think teams like Leipzig and some of those other teams are strengthening. the gap's still massive to Bayern Munich. Dortmund are continually strong, and it's played at a reasonable pace, and I think it's interesting listening to Dortmund's talk about their sporting director talking about Haaland. He basically saying Haaland was a lovely lad. Everyone loved him, and he was clearly their best player. But for the last 12 months, it was, even despite all that and the fact he wasn't doing anything wrong and he wasn't talking about it, it was very unsettling for them to be permanently in a conversation where they know their best player's going, and all the question is where they're going to, and just saying that was quite unsettling for the whole squad from the board down to not really be planning. And so maybe there'll be some positives in terms of their team in not having that going on this year. Although I'd imagine the next one will be where Bellingham's going. So
you've got another one, Rich, probably for Fabrizio Romano,
and that and that is their that is their model.
It's their model, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, and fair play to them. I mean, they went and won a Champions League 20-something years ago, and they nearly bankrupt the club. They became big spending, challenge, outspending Bayern, and it nearly folded the club. And they went back to, the basics in a sense, and they said, well, we've got an amazing crowd, we've got an amazing ground, we've got the support, let's just focus on trying to at least remain neutral on player trading, become profitable, and try and do it that way. And they a lot of clubs in Europe are very, very hypocritical about the way they behave and the way they operate, and saying how worthy they are and everything else. But at least Dortmund, they do kind of live that. They do kind of live that. They are buying young players. They are trying to make the young players into better players. They are then trying to sell them on at a profit to keep the club profitable and keep it generating. And to be fair, in a world in Europe where most teams, spout how wonderful they are and how worthy they are, like Barcelona and Bayern Munich, whilst they're run by crooks and they bully and do everything wrong about football, at least Dortmund do it right. Or as close to right.
The views of Rich Williams are the views of the Mancunian way on that one. When you're calling everyone corrupt.
All the views of I'm talking about that's factual. That's not.
Yeah, I know it is.
That's not allegations. I mean, Barcelona have been fined 20 million, and they have had a number of their people charged in court. And who was it? The Bayern Munich president spent a number of months in jail for tax fraud. So those things are not just the allegation. Those are actual things that have
people
happened.
In glass houses, Rich.
Yeah,
well, I think we've learned, and you got to remember is. I've always liked Dortmund, like you said. They bring in young. I mean, they took the gamble on Bellingham at 16 out of Birmingham. When you could have quite easily gone over to the Rags and stayed in their reserves for B team or whatever for 3 years and probably kind of made it. Sancho, as much as we didn't like probably as fans the way Sancho behaved, at least Sancho was confident enough to think, no, I'm good enough for a first team berth somewhere here.
It's hard to argue with his move. Hard to argue with his move to Dortmund. I mean,
and City made money out of it.
Yeah, you can argue he then ruined it by going purely for money and
over the road,
going to a team that were falling down a bit for just stupid money. But he clearly did the right thing going to Dortmund, because I don't think he would have got that time and progressed that much at City. He was behind Foden, and had he stayed for City, maybe that would have interrupted Foden's progress. So we'll never know.
No. I mean, funnily enough, Rich, I've had a look at our past. We've only played them 4 times. Didn't know that. I thought we'd actually played them a lot more. City have obviously won twice. We've drawn one, we've lost one. Yeah. I mean, when I always think of Dortmund, I always think of that game at the ETIHAD where Joe Hart just decided to become Superman. If anyone remembers that game, it was Borussia Dortmund versus Joe Hart. It wasn't Manchester City versus Dortmund. It was Joe Hart. Royce was the guy was a man-made wall, and that's what I always think of when I think of this team in Dortmund. Is this probably our biggest contenders for top spot, you think?
Well, I think when you look at the first week, you know, I didn't watch the whole Dortmund game, but they were utterly dominant against Copenhagen for most of it, you know, and we were utterly dominant against Seville. So it's hard to see that based on those games that either of those sides improve enough to really threaten, you know, I mean, my gut feeling is that, you know, Dortmund probably aren't at the level to compete with us if we're on our game, you know, if we're playing well. You know, I think we'll have to drop a bit in our standard, you know, play like the first half against Newcastle or the first half against Palace. I think, you know, or chunks of the Villa game, I think Dortmund can match us. But if we play like we did in some of the other games, I think we'll be strong. Seville, second half of Palace, etc. That you know, I think we'll be strong. So I think this is a game which, you know, is a free hit in a way for Dortmund particularly, but in some ways, you know, is a game that might be more about determining first and second than actually determining qualification.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I mentioned it on another preview we did. I think it was the Seville post match even. That I think if City win this, I think you're pretty much guaranteed top spot because your qualification at least, because you're then going into a double header with Copenhagen, whereas Dortmund are going into a double header with Seville. By the time we get to Seville and Dortmund away, we could have 12 out of 12 singing and dancing, and away we go. And I mean, the team lineup is going to be very interesting tomorrow. I'm going to ask my opening question to you, Rich, is does Akanji start still? Does he deserve to be dropped, basically?
Well, I'd say he deserves to start, but I mean, what will be most interesting is obviously, you know, I mean, it would be the same here as in the UK. There's been nearly no news or hearing about anything, and everyone's been very quiet. So, and you know, whilst we'd expected it to be 3 days, you know, to a game, it's been over a week. So, you know, you wonder, has Stones, you know, made progress? Calvin Phillips has had another week to come back. So in a way, there'll be
sports training.
So there'll be a lot more availability and strength potential. I don't know about Kyle Walker. You know, I've heard rumours that he was going to be out for over a month, but then that the injury wasn't that serious. It was just something he felt. So it's hard to know without real clarity. I mean, I still think, you know, we'll be, you know, if it was away or you know, the big game like Spurs, I still think we'd probably end up playing Stones or Aki at fullback to have 3 really good defenders. But we may feel at home, in this game, we may feel that we can play Gomez and Cancelo. You know, if Walker's injured, we may want to give Phillips a game but you know, I thought that was becoming an absolute imperative because of Rodri. But if Rodri's had 8 days now without playing, then, you know, the worry about him fatiguing goes away. So I think it's going to be quite interesting because, you know, Stones was playing well. I mean, you know, we might see something crazy like Stones and Akanji because, you know, I thought Stones was playing better than Diaz, and I thought Akanji played, you know, if anything, the better of the two. So who knows?
No, what I mean, Alec, is Laporte's now back in training. Don't think he'll play tomorrow, but I think you're looking after the international break, possibly the derby after the on the second after the international break.
And I'm looking forward to him. I really am looking for it. I mean, you know, I think he was my player of the year last year, and I think it's a bit of a miserable old git, really, Laporte, but he is a fighter, and when we needed him last season, he was, I felt in 19 it was Gundu when he kind of stepped up and got us over the line, or in 2012 it was, Yaya who stepped up in those last 8 games, and 14, and I think Laporte was our man last year. He really stepped up when the going got tough, and literally put his body on the line. And we've seen that with him, 5 months out because of what he did at the end of the season. So I think he deserves to come back, get on the pitch, and get a big round of applause from the City fans.
Definitely. Is there any going to be surprises for you moving on to this? As in, and what I mean by that is, because when I've looked at other people's reviews and I've looked at what the thinking is, there's a lot of the front three seems to be the thing that everyone's a bit umming and ahhing about. Because I think everyone is desperate to see Alvarez.
Yeah.
I think that's Haaland. Does Haaland start for you? To me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Pep would be too scared not to play Haaland in a Champions League game. I think
so Haaland's in. Who are you two either side then?
Well, I would play Foden and Alvarez, because I think the best football that I think we've seen this season with the intensity we want has been those three. But whether that's what Pep will play, I don't know. I mean, Riyadh always seems to play in the Champions League. Grealish got his hour in the game, and then got a lot of praise for directness. So, we could say it should be Foden and Alvarez, but you could turn around and it's actually Mahrez and Grealish. I mean,
you know what I think he'll do, and this is just me. I would play Alvarez 100%. Don't think Pep will. I think it'll end up being Grealish, Haaland, and Foden. I still look at Foden on the right, and I see something a little bit more comfortable than him on the left. I think him being on the right gives us another option as well. I know others have said Foden on the right. No, I just think, look at the games he's played on the right, is the games he's performed the best in.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to see Foden playing back in the mids.
I know we do. I know. It goes back to
I
Foden.
really want to see him getting a chance. Yeah.
We all said it. Foden's the silver replacement, and he just never has been.
Yeah, I mean, he's a different player, but for me, I just like to see, because I thought, sometimes, and we saw it in that Palace game first half, that if he's playing in front of a really attacking fullback and he's playing wide, I know it could happen on the right as well as the left. He just gets, stuck in a corner almost and doesn't have his play. And when he's allowed some freedom, he's magnificent. But
they're all agreeing with you, mate. They all want Haaland, Alvarez, Foden, and you know what? I agree with you. The problem is we've got Rich. We can all sit here and say that front three.
Yeah,
it's Pep Guardiola.
No, exactly, and
that's the problem here.
I think we talked about it for if we'd have played Spurs, talking about, well, do we actually want to play a player like Phillips with a lot more energy, or do we want to drop Cancelo and have Gomez and Stones or someone playing fullback? We might do different things, but there are some things that Pep does differently, and let's be honest, we can't really argue with him because he's normally right, as long as it's not a Champions League final.
Yeah, but we don't tend to have an issue getting out of this group stage. The group stage seems to be the piss easy part of getting out, and away we go. And we do seem to be able to get us out of that.
Yeah, and we have got one of the weaker Champions League groups, really. Particularly based on the bit of collapse of Sevilla this year. So we have got one of the weaker groups.
On paper, I looked at the group and I thought, ooh, tricky one. And only because I saw Seville's European pedigree and Dortmund, they always give us a tough game. So I generally just thought, but it turned out the complete opposite. Like you said, Sevilla decided to have a collapse. I think, haven't they even sat their manager since he gave them a good idea?
Possibly. He was, they had the ex-president was in the crowd. Yeah, the ex-president was in the crowd leading the singing against the new president. I mean,
that was great.
Yeah, crazy.
And obviously,
you looked at their players, and it just looked like someone had gone on free transfer Football Manager something. I mean, it was such a weird bunch of players. There's at least 10 ex-Premier League players. I mean, half of them have played in Manchester, but they weren't ones that you'd be thinking we really want to get. It's Janusz Shea and Fernando and Tellez and Karim Rekic. It's just like,
no disrespect to Navas.
Navas is a club legend for them. I mean, he's old.
Whoa, roll that one back, Rich.
For Seville, he's
a legend.
For Seville, yeah.
Oh right, I'll give you that.
Not a city. No. I mean, he's up there with anyone.
Good. Not that good.
Yeah, up there with anyone in their history. But yeah, no, he was just a nice lad on the wing for us.
Didn't Negredo play for Seville as well at some point? Or have I just made that up?
I think he might have done. Negredo played for about 12 different teams. So
have I just made that up? Tell me in the chat. Have I just made up Alvaro Negredo played for Seville? Maybe I have. I don't know. Good evening, Anthony. How are you, mate? Hope you are well. Thanks for joining us as well. Everyone else in the chat. Any surprises in midfield? I'm guessing you're not. Bernardo, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you know what? In midfield, the only question seems to be for me is that they normally rest either Gundogan or De Bruyne. And, it's Wolves on, so it's quite a short turnaround, I think. I think it's less than 3 days till...
Well, I was about to ask that.
So, I think they'll
early kickoff play a part?
Yeah, I think that it's only 2.5 days or, a bit under 3 days. So they do say for complete recovery is between 3 and 4 days. So the quick turnaround may mean that there will be, certainly I wouldn't this season want to play Walker 2 games that close together. I probably wouldn't want to play De Bruyne and Gundogan for full games that close together. So for me, I would, be resting one of De Bruyne or Gundogan, and keeping them for Saturday. Say Bernardo, Rodri, and I'd also be looking at, I'd be looking at with 2.5 days, either trying to hook Rodri pretty early if you're going to start him twice, or give Phillips a start in one of those 2 games.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you. I think there'll be changes. This is going to sound really daft, but I look at Saturday as a more important game. I just do. Listen, everyone knows my relationship with this competition. It's a group stage. You can make a slip and you'll get back. Anyway, but we said we're going to try and keep this 30 minutes on the previews, and that's what we're going to do.
Yep.
Do you think, I'm not going to ask you a score prediction because that's daft. Everyone else in the chat, give me score predictions. Are you expecting a win? Full house. By the way, there's no Champions League anthem on Wednesday. All British clubs have apparently stopped them. Whether there's going to be a national anthem, I don't know. They're the rumours at the moment, Rich, is that there'll be the national anthem, not the Champions League.
No, I mean that, and I'm sure the Champions League will do something, specific to honour the Queen, and that would seem, something like that, and then a silence in games would seem, more appropriate. I think, the Champions League was always going to go ahead. I think the Premier League might find itself in a bit of a pickle with.
No, we've seen PSV Arsenal. That's off.
because it's in London. When was it?
Yeah,
Is that
Thursday night. It's off.
yeah? I mean,
And
what I've heard.
Though, the only thing I will say, sorry to interrupt, Rich. Apparently, if PSB and Arsenal can't agree on a date, Arsenal might have to forfeit the points off.
Yeah, and that's what they said about the champion. And I think because the massive problem is next Monday will be the biggest police operation and probably army operation on British soil since World War II. And so there's a lot of talk that I think it's Chelsea, Liverpool, and they're saying that they may not. Yeah, they couldn't police it. So it's going to be chaos for some of these teams. I do think there are going to have to be teams playing Tuesday, Thursday, midweek because of this, and it is going to kill something like the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup, because these teams, if they have to play those games, they're going to play the kids.
Rich, giving away Thursday night here, mate. That's the topic on Thursday night. We are going to talk about not the Premier League messing up this weekend.
Yeah.
Did the Premier League drop one last weekend? Which is kind of had a bit of a thing, but we'll get into it on Thursday night. So, Rich, you're going for obviously a win. Everyone's going 3-0, 4-0. Oh, Anthony Jack Lee's gone 4-3 and 3-2.
Whenever we play Dortmund, it always seems to me like it's 2-1 or something like that. So, I think I don't think it's going to be a thrashing. I think it'll be a relatively comfortable 2-1 or something like that, 2-0. I just think, unless Haaland is really, really determined to make a statement because it's his old team.
I'm going to put you on the spot now, Rich. Oh, no, I'm going to not me. You on the spot, me on the spot. I'm going 5-1.
Wow.
I think we'll smash them. But anyway, we're going to leave it there because I know Rich has got, like I said, we're going to try and keep all previews 30 minutes. Post-match and Thursday nights will go a bit longer. We want you to enjoy it more. So, big thank you to everyone for joining us. Please give it a thumbs up. I've gone 5-1. Rich has gone for a narrow 2-1. I will be there on a Wednesday evening. So, hopefully when we get back, there'll be a post-match as well, depending on time restraints and getting back in. But keep an eye, and don't forget, there is a City Daily News in 10 back tomorrow, 7 a.m. Back live. Not live, but it will be back at 7 a.m. So big thank you to you, Rich. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, have a good day.
And I will see you all tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Take care.
See you then. Take care. Cheers. Bye.